start
You
then?
say a lot.
Yes, sir.
You say a lot of not recording in a podcast. I must say, you know that the idea of a podcast is that we actually record it.
Is that a threat, Esmee?
I mean, that's
No, just
good start.
Let's start.
We usually like to have Esmee open up this by putting our guests on the back foot. Welcome to Cloud Realities, an original podcast from Capgemini. And this week, the final part of our telecoms mini-series, and we are going to look at growth in the industry. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee van der Giessen.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
And I'm delighted to say that joining us, as normal for these mini-series episodes, is Praveen Shankar. Praveen, how are you doing? You well?
Awesome, mate.
Good to see you. Good to see you. And joining us for a conversation on growth, I'm delighted to say is Nik Willetts, who's the Chief Exec of the TM Forum. Nik, how are you today?
I'm really well, thanks, Dave. Great to see you.
Great to see you too. And I'm very glad you could join us. Rob and Ez are here. How are you guys? You good?
Oh, continuing to live the dream, David. It's sad though, because we're coming to the end of the mini-series. It's been a fun mini-series. It's taken us to interesting places. We've had great discussion, and now it's a bit like good one to end on, obviously, with the biggest challenge that telcos face. But yeah, still a sort of bittersweet moment.
It is.
It's leaving us to be quite curious, right? Where for the coming months, where is it going to take us?
Well, for me, the mini-series has been interesting. Yes, it's been focused on very deeply on one specific vertical, but there's read-across challenges, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, the issues like dealing with legacy, dealing with growth in a changing world, dealing with regulation. These are not unique to the sector, but they are specifically deep in the sector.
Yeah, and I think it's been very interesting. What I enjoy about them personally is you learn a lot through the just being part of the conversations. You meet lots of interesting people as well. So yeah, it's been fun.
Let's deal with today then. It's the final episode of the 5-episode mini-series. Praveen, remind us of the framework and set today up for us.
Yeah, so thanks, Dave. Let's take a moment to recap. A few months ago when we launched this podcast series, Reimagining the Telecom industry, to deep dive into the profound challenges and exciting opportunities shaping the sector today. So far, we have explored the key themes like simplification, network transformation, data and AI, and regulation. In this episode, we are turning our focus to the topic that comes time and time again, and that's growth. In fact, whenever I speak to the telco CEOs across the world and I ask them about their biggest challenge, the answer is almost always the same: growth. And that's why I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Nik, the CEO of TM Forum. Nik, I remember you made waves in the industry, I think a couple of years ago, when you boldly declared code red for the telecom sector, which was a powerful wake-up call. And you urged the industry to confront its structural, strategic, and mindset challenges and take it head-on. You highlighted issues such as stagnant growth despite massive investment in technology, lagging innovation, and urgent need and the courage to transform. Nik, it's fantastic to have you here, and I can't wait to hear your insights on the growth imperative of today.
Great to see you, Praveen. And once again, we always have fascinating conversations. So really looking forward to this one.
Nik, for those listeners that have maybe not heard of TM Forum and how it fits into the world of the telecoms industry, do you just want to sort of paint a picture for us? What's the main purpose?
Thanks, Dave. Well, the TM Forum's a global collaboration platform for the telecoms industry. We've been doing this for over 35 years. And basically, we bring together the whole ecosystem of suppliers, service providers, consultants, increasing numbers of startups and actually companies and adjacencies to work together on the key challenges for the industry. We do that in loads of different ways. We do that through structured, mission-driven collaboration projects. Sometimes the result of that is standards. But it all starts for us with co-innovation, bringing together the best minds in the industry to say, how can we solve a problem we've all got and move the industry forward in the process? We'll
come back to the challenges and potentially how those challenges can connect to growth shortly. But before we move off the role of the TM Forum, tell us a little bit about DTW, which I know is coming up in the next few weeks.
So We run events all around the world, and our flagship conference is DTW Ignite. That happens in Copenhagen, week of June 16th this year. This is a pretty unusual event. It's not just a conference, not just a trade show. It's really a summit for the industry to come together. So we'll bring together delegates from well over 100 countries, over 600 different companies worldwide, over 4,000 delegates, doing everything from engineering level innovation up to very senior level discussion and debate on what needs to happen in the industry. And what I love about DTW is how the industry takes a moment to take a breath, come together and say, where are we? What needs to change next? So very, very different to the sort of mega trade shows. It's an opportunity for our members to come together and really steer the industry forward and take stock of what we've done in the last year.
So when you step back and you've been thinking about DTW for 2025, what are the big threads going into it for you?
So the big theme for this year is all about growth, pathways to growth. Much as there's been rightfully a lot of focus on consolidation, M&A, cost cutting in the last few years, you can't cut your way to growth. And in the TM Forum, we believe there's three key ingredients where we can really make a difference to this. And they're the key themes of DTW this year. The first is composable IT and ecosystems. How do we build the software that lets us experiment, deliver new customer experiences, and new partnerships with others to unlock new paths to growth? The second is autonomous networks. So much of our cost base caught up in the network, but also when we think about themes like Open Gateway, I know you've explored in the podcast before, the ability to turn that into reality on a dime for customers, turn it up, turn it down, deliver them a new service, all rests on an incredibly efficient network that can understand customer intent. And thirdly, the theme of this year and probably last year as well, all around AI and data. But this year, it's all about doing that at scale. We're moving past what is now considered the norm to use AI when in customer-facing services. How do we really build that into every aspect of the company and its operations? And we think that means quite a different approach to the operating model. So all three themes, pathways within the event, adding up to this question of where's the growth going to come from and what's the future purpose of the telecom industry.
There's a nice thread in there as you read them out. They're all capability focused to achieve an outcome, which actually shows a lot of focus around what we're going to talk about, how we're going to get together, how do we actually get to where we need to be. I think when you go to these types of things, there's a lack of focus sometimes on the actual capability that's going to achieve the result that you all know and want. So it's quite a nice connection between all of those to say we're going to become better at what we do, and therefore you're going to get this.
Yeah, that's really in the DNA of the forum and our members as an industry body, is this sense of we're not really satisfied until we're really making a difference or doing something really practical. So DTW is a great showcase for that, and it's this moment in time where we get to say, where are we and what do we need to do next? And I think those three themes we see, particularly this year, autonomous networks is the really hot one. Everybody's very, very interested in what this means for both operating cost, speed, agility, velocity, and those new customer experiences we can deliver.
Nick, I have a very fundamental question. What is stopping the telcos? Despite huge investment in technology, growth has been elusive. What is stopping them?
I think, Praveen, first of all, it's the $1 trillion question, right? This is a big industry that's grappling with where it's going next. For me, it starts with our mindset, and it's actually exactly what you just said. We as an industry start with technology. You go back 30, 40 years in the history of mobile, it's all been about sunken cost, debt-fueled business, build it and they will come logic. And as that has tapped out and hyper competition has driven down the cost we can charge for those services, quite rightly, we've stayed with the same logic of we invent another generation of technology and we expect people to show up and pay more for it. 5G has proven that model is fundamentally broken. And there's a risk as an industry that we're falling behind what customers actually want. We sit very low, if not at the bottom in NPS compared to other industries. So we know the experience isn't up there. And what the customer cares about is the experience, not the technology. So I think if you look outside in at the industry, it starts with our mindset, which when we talk, as I know we've done, Praveen, with customers of telecom providers in enterprise space, in SME and consumer, they want reliable connectivity. They can control They want to be able to turn that up and down. They want it just to work. And the telecom industry has, for the last few years and throughout its history, shown up with Gs, with gigabits, with throughput, with latency, all of which are important, but don't add up to that solution the customer's looking for. So it's a big mental shift for us to go through, and that works through into how we go to market, how we market our products, how we brand them, all the way through to the actual true technology to make that happen. That's the big shift we're going through. We're starting to see it happening, arguably a bit late, but I think if we can make that leap, there's a lot of growth opportunity.
How did you do that, Nick? How do you turn that attention to more user focused? Because it sounds easy, like and maybe but how do you do that?
It's incredibly hard when you're dealing with organizations that are, first of all, very big. And secondly, you've got a fair number of people within them who've been in those businesses for a long time. And many of them are derived from government organizations. So many of these were, take here in the UK, this was the post office owned by the government before it became a company like BT. So making that shift has happened already over decades. But it's only really in the last 10 years that this shift, with the rise of cloud computing, we've seen the shift in the customer's mindset from having to understand the technology, having to know what you're buying in detail, having to really care about what's inside it, to thinking about what you actually are trying to turn up or down. So cloud computing for me is a really good parallel, where if you go back pre-cloud computing, so 10, 15 years ago, your CTO in any kind of enterprise would have really understood the kind of servers they needed. They would have spent a lot of time and money on their own physical infrastructure. Today, they think about throughput and cost and quality of service and SLAs with a company like AWS or Microsoft or Google. Telco needs to make that same shift to not show up talking about, look at this great technology. That's like Amazon turning up talking about, hey, we've got this great processor in our servers, when the customer cares about, okay, how quickly can it service my AI workload? There's other adjacencies there that telco is starting to tap into. You think about security. I mean, a week doesn't pass right now with another cybersecurity incident. All of those good and bad actors flow through our pipes as a telco. And it's one of the fastest growing opportunities for telco right now is around cybersecurity protection. And as we think about more and more concerns over sovereignty, use of AI, greater value flowing through our pipes, there's a lot of opportunity for us to add value to that as well.
Maybe if we can just go one level deeper on that sovereignty question, because I think when we were at MWC, what was clear was that there was a palpable frisson in the air, like an excitement around the potential of.
It's a big word for you, Dave. Frisson. Say it again. I'm impressed.
Frisson. You know what I did? Yesterday I also used the phrase du jour.
Oh my word!
I know.
Truly European.
Well, someone else used it in the meeting, and I'm like, I'm taking a bit of that. So that I might pop that in before the end of the session. You never know.
I think we should increase the level of French in this podcast generally. I think that adds an air of sophistication, which is sorely lacking from our capability today.
It is entirely right. Entirely right. Going back though to the frisson of excitement in MWC, Nick. What seemed to be palpable was the telco really recognizing that they have got a strategic space to start to occupy. Are you guys seeing that the same? And what's your take on it?
Sovereignty is a big, big topic, and it's a big topic right now, as you say. I think the risk is that we're looking at it as an industry in a bit of a siloed way. Okay, right. You want your workloads to run in country. So we're going to have regulation or preference for it to run in a certain location. And therefore, I as a telco will put in place GPU as a service or put in place my physical infrastructure for that. Although on paper that stacks up, because you say, well, I've got the right physical locations for that to happen. They're close to the customer. I'm a regulated business. As we saw with cloud, it's not that hard for the hyperscale companies in the room to say, well, we'll build a data center there, whatever, and we can do that typically at scale better. So to me, it's a little too siloed when the conversation narrows to sovereign GPU. There's some interest there. There's potentially in certain locations where that'll work. I think we have to think about sovereignty as a protection conversation. Why is it that governments rightly are concerned about where that data is flowing, who they're dependent on for parts of the economy to run? and what's the role of telco in solving that? And that spans from a level of control over where data goes to stay within new regulations that will appear, through to being able to offer customers to take away what will become a huge overhead and headache about sovereignty, to make sure that data is showing up in the right places. That doesn't mean doing it all yourself. That doesn't mean being the sole provider. That, to me, is the old telco mindset of, well, we'll provide this all as a package.
Right.
It comes down to partnering and recognizing that as a telco industry, we're great at building dependable, resilient networks. When it comes to everything you need to run a business on AI, if we're talking about that around sovereignty, you're going to need partnerships with others, ranging from the hardware providers through to those who can make those services really run as well. So I think it's the partnership piece, to me, is coming. But I still hear some of these sovereignty discussions being a little too simplistic. They sound awfully like Edge and some of the early days of cloud to me.
For sovereignty, it's convenient for a lot of people to try and simplify the conversation, but you've got legal control, operational control, data control, you've got the skills and the ecosystem that you're going to use to deliver it. It is just a nuanced conversation, and depending on your role and what you do, sovereignty can mean a different thing as well.
Yeah.
So for certain organizations, sovereignty means something a lot simpler than compared to others. But the supply chain that is used to deliver those services is rising in sharp focus now, and where capability comes from. And then people are starting to realize that the globalization, especially in the technology field, because it's an easy thing to globalize, has meant that your supply chain permeates everywhere, and you have some tough choices to make. And I think that ecosystem is going to take decades to rewire itself. But what I see is a lot of people starting to move to rewire them. So the energy and the political will and the very large organizations are starting to embrace it. And be keen to get your view on the sort of time frame you see where we might get to a position where it's proper sovereignty as opposed to pseudo sovereignty, which I think is some of the stuff you've started to allude to.
That's a great point, Rob. I think there's, as you said, different flavors.
Had to happen sooner or later, Rob.
It's happened once. And it was a guest that said it as well. I mean, that's me done. That's my end of year right there. Yeah,
you can kick back now, Rob. You've done your work for today. I think, look, there's different flavors of sovereignty. I think what's within that is this is going to be complicated. So every different sector, different regulations, different regulatory regimes in different parts of the world. And it will probably not be static either, because if there's anything we're learning in this era of AI, it's constantly moving. So even the way we regulate things is going to have to change. That's why I actually wouldn't start from regulation or sort of try to predict that. I would start from what does the company care about in its risk profile that's trying to achieve some sort of sovereignty. And that's where, as a telecom industry, we need to be saying, right, how can we service that? Because as you just said, there's a lot to play in terms of telecom favor. It's regulated in my local market. It's a brand I trust. It typically has deep links into government and trusted sources. And it's going to be there for forever, right? It's not going to be something that we suddenly disappears as a company or an entity. It's going to have some level of protection. So for the telco to be seen as a very trusted partner, I think is true. And in sovereignty context, we have to think about how far does telco go and what does it bring into that? When you get into all of the supply chain, I think there's a very delicate balance to achieve here, which is where we know that global standards and the global approach works well. Telecom is, as an industry, proof of that. The takeoff in mobile, the success in terms of much as we all cast aspersions over the commercial success of 5G, it was very successful in delivering a single global standard, which has taken a lot of cost out of the supply chain as well. So there's a delicate balance so we don't over-index on this sovereignty topic and go for everybody doing their own thing, which will ultimately slow the global economy down, and find ways to build in the right level of protections. I think there's a lot baked into the lessons of cloud compute and existing regulation, which are making their way very quickly into conversations around AI, which help with that. The disconnect, back to Praveen's point earlier, I see is that telco is still seeing that as an all-encompassing solution, rather than saying, actually, we're part of an ecosystem here, and building that local ecosystem and doing the things only we can do well, which take away headaches for our small, medium, or large enterprise clients is the opportunity.
So we've talked about a few areas of growth there. We've talked about like actually leveraging the network, so connections, and obviously things like the open framework and things are going to be material in that space. You touched on cyber and the role that you guys could have in cyber, and then we've just gone on to like unlocking a little bit new services and new revenues with things like sovereign. Any other things that are occurring to you when you think about like new ground that telco should be thinking about when they think about growth?
I think if you zoom out a bit further, Dave, you can think about AI as a whole and say, if I, as an enterprise, am moving to a world where my business is truly AI native, as an AI does the majority of key operational tasks and human beings are able to focus on the things that human beings are brilliant at, that business runs fundamentally differently from what we know today. And it puts new requirements on connectivity or telco providers. That starts with the network goes from being what would be seen as critical today to mission critical infrastructure. If my business literally can't make a decision through an agentic workflow with certain partners I'm working with without that infrastructure, or I've got new vulnerabilities coming in, the value of what's flowing over those pipes goes up. So the resilience of the infrastructure we provide becomes even more important. So our core proposition as an industry to connect changes, but also it creates new requirements. There's going to be times a day or night I suddenly need a lot of bandwidth or a new quality of service for a period of time. And telco's traditionally worked on a fixed logic. How big a pipe do you want? And I'll put one in for you, rather than I'm going to turn this up or down to your needs. So the real needs of connectivity themselves need to be rethought in this AI era. Then, as we touched on just now, the need to protect and preserve and make sure that the data that's flowing through, there may even be a role for telco in making sure that the relevant AI algorithms, if you're using AI at scale, how do I make sure that they're all sitting within my guardrails? There may be roles for telco in there, in addition to more classical cybersecurity. And then there's capabilities that telco is really good at in terms of both the natural knowledge and workforce and skills in a local market, through to competencies around the way we bill subscribers, the way that we understand our subscribers, lots of knowledge on what's flowing through our networks that's also got value in creating value for others as well. So I think this is more than a silver bullet kind of conversation of, well, there's a new thing we can do there. This is more of a, let's reimagine how our customers' business is going to work in the era. And then what do we need to do? What solutions are they going to have? We just touched on sovereignty. To me, that's a headache we can take away. At the other end of the spectrum, there's going to be things we can do to help them grow their businesses. And until we get in that mindset, we're still stuck in a, would you like a bigger pipe logic?
Right. So you might have touched on this a little bit earlier with Esmee's question, but maybe let's just return to the challenges then within that context. And, you know, perhaps what you're going to do at DTW is try and unpack that as a bit of an industry. If you look inside out, what are you going to change as an industry to get you into that growth field? And you look outside in, which is like, what are you listening to that's actually helping you understand the space that you might occupy? Does that make more sense?
Yeah, no, that's really clear. That's really clear. So at DTW, what we try and do is exactly that, is to anchor what we're talking about in terms of what does this mean ultimately for the customer? What's the experience can we create? What new services, what new capabilities do we have? Because we are not just talking at a surface strategic level, but really getting down to the nuts and bolts and the technology that runs telco businesses today and talking about what needs to change. You do also need to think a little bit inside out and say, as I transform, for example, to an era of truly composable software, rather than this brittle, pre-integrated, very expensive to operate. In most telcos, you find software that's 20 or 30 years old running core parts of the business. What does that actually allow me to do? And we'll boil that down at DTW to, well, one of the key things it lets you do is experiment. So today, if you're an inspirational product owner in a telco or you're in marketing, you've got to typically find a business case to make changes or go play with things or experiment. Because it's so expensive and so risky to change some of that technology. With the work the TM Forum is doing around things like open digital architecture, we're getting to a world where it's incredibly easy to go try something. That might be you've got a customer who has a new need. You want to explore something that might over time grow into a brilliant new revenue stream for you, or it might just keep one customer happy, all the way through to the unlocking that some of the human ingenuity that exists in spades in the telco businesses to say, let's go try that. Let's see if that works. Let's learn from that experiment. But it's the technology foundations that get in the way of our ability to do that, because it's just too expensive and too risky to change some of that today. So whether it's in IT or networks or through to use of AI, we're able to, through events like DTW Showcase, but through organizations like TM Forum, say, here's a different way of doing it. And then in our Catalyst program, which is our proof of concept program that brings together over 200 companies who are collaborating together on how this can be done, we can actually play with that at an industry scale as well. And that allows us to anchor in an outside-in view, this is what the customer wants, and an inside-out view, look at what the new tech can do.
One of the things that is very useful when you do that test, fail, learn loop that you're talking about, being able to experiment a different way, is simulation.
Mm-hmm.
And I know telcos have played with the concept of simulation. You know, we do it everywhere: simulate a building, simulate an aircraft, etc. How sophisticated is their ability to simulate the world and test it in a digital environment before they go and maybe roll it out to a network that would have an impact? Is that a thing that they're actively pursuing and getting more weight behind, or is it still nascent in the industry from a telecom perspective?
It's growing very, very quickly. So it's a core concept in our autonomous networks mission is around digital twins and the ability to build a true digital twin of the telecom network and then simulate what happens in all kinds of different scenarios. So there's an element of the network that will always be fixed. You've got fixed physical infrastructure in places. Being able to look at everything from a disaster recovery scenario, what happens in an earthquake-prone part of the world, to the network in this scenario, through to a heavy demand when you have, say, a major football game or sports match and you're putting a lot of load on the network in a certain location, through to some of the experimentation I'm talking about. Let's think about what happens when we introduce that new service, what's the impact on the network. So digital twins we see as a really important capability for telecom providers. We see a lot happening there very quickly, actually, to build up that capability. Some really impressive and sophisticated models starting to come out, which then can be used with customers as well.
So maybe let's bring a few threads together by way of closing. And I just wonder if you'd had an example over the last 18 months, couple of years, where you've seen a particular provider, which you can name or not, your call, where they've done something particularly innovative that's opened up growth and you've gone, didn't see that coming. Yeah, that's interesting.
There's loads of examples, actually. The industry likes to have this narrative, I think particularly here in Europe, that there's no growth and there's no hope almost. I feel completely differently about that. Now, I have the privilege of working with companies all around the world, so I perhaps have a different viewpoint. But I've seen in the last year significant growth in some markets where there's really innovative new add-ons and loyalty programs and new services being delivered at the consumer end of the spectrum. Companies really start to take the SME opportunity, small, medium enterprise opportunity seriously. That's a big growth engine if telcos choose to seize it. And then some really encouraging progress around large enterprise as well. So I wouldn't call out any specific company, but we've got examples out there. We have a number of them on our stages at DTW. And then what we see happening in our innovation engine in the forum gives you a pretty good lens on what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years as well. So despite all the doom and gloom sometimes in the industry, I'm actually pretty optimistic about where this is going. And I think if we continue to focus on actually driving real change and changing some of the mindset in the industry, we can see this industry have even greater purpose and impact.
Ez, where's your head at?
It's at collaboration in the ecosystem, because we've been talking about this throughout the entire telco podcast miniseries, but I think obviously in all conversations that we're having in the past year or even longer than that. Collaboration in the ecosystem helps to decrease risk aversion within an organization, replacing a what do I stand to lose attitude with a what do I stand to learn outlook, notes a recent article from IMD. And I think that in the pursuit of innovation through partnerships, which we've been talking about, organizations may inadvertently compromise in the competitive edge, leading to potential conflicts and maybe even a dilution of their own unique value propositions. And I was wondering, what do you see happening in that telco partnership space? Like, on the one hand, you see organizations say, no, we work together with our partners and, we're really tight and close. And on the other hand, you still have your numbers to crack and you still want to gain profit. What do you see happening there?
That's a really great question, Esmee. So as long as I've been CEO of the TM Forum, this has been a theme that comes up, and it is a constant tension, and rightly. I would say the telecom industry is actually among the best in the world at really actually executing on collaboration. You won't find any industry that doesn't say it's not important. But telecom, partly because of its unique structure and partly because of its history, has been really good at collaboration. And that's why organizations like the TM Forum exist and have so many members participating, because there is an understanding at the right level that ultimately these are all quite similar businesses with similar challenges, and that the diversity of thought and the ability to shift how the supply chain works and shift how partnerships are structured works better when we work together. And we've proven that time and time and time again. There's countless examples for the industry's commercial and operational success on that foundation. It's always going to be, at times in that journey, you butt up against commercial sensitivity. So AI has been a really interesting test for us. Is that new AI algorithm what's going to win you that little bit more market share? Is it going to allow you to service your customers, improve free cash flows, make you look better than the competitor in the market? Or is it something that actually we should co-develop and own, and then we all profit? The mood in telecoms shifted probably just coming out of COVID, so 2 to 3 years ago, from that being an active question to, at the top of the house, a recognition that we need to collaborate as an industry. We're facing some common challenges. Actually, it's not really competition within the industry that's the issue. It's alive and well. Many would claim it's holding the industry back, but it's a fact of life. The actual competition is where we sit in the value chain, and that to improve that position, our industry needs to work together. And that's why we've seen in the last few years huge growth in the innovation engine in the TM Forum, which is where people are really starting to collaborate on more of the use cases and what kind of services they could offer. So things you might think of as quite competitive, and collaborating on deeper topics like how the networks run, which has always been a little bit of the secret sauce for telco as well. So I'd say the appetite in the telecom industry for collaboration right now is higher than ever and only increasing.
Nik, I think I completely agree. Within the sector, telecom industry is one of the best in collaboration. What are your views around across the industry collaboration? Because we discussed a lot of topics on growth, where telecom industry needs to work with other sectors, other companies. Are you seeing that also shifting towards more collaboration?
I am, but far too slowly, Praveen. I mean, glacial speed would be generous, I would say. So there's pockets of very ambitious telcos out there who are getting this right, but there really are just a handful. The majority are still talking about it. There's a theoretical logic there. And what I think it comes down to is what we touched on a bit earlier, which is how well do you really understand your customer? When are you showing up and really sitting with them and seeing the challenges in their business, the challenges they have, and thinking about how you can serve those? And then have you got the ability to experiment within your business to service those? That requires pretty much everything about how you sell and service customers to shift. From the majority of cases where telco services are sold into a procurement department, to having more of a consultative conversation, like your organization would have every day, different set of sales skills, through to the ability of the service teams and the technology to flex to meet that need, through to then doing that at scale, at the right margin point in a way that works for everybody. These are new muscles and new skills that need to be added, and new capabilities that need to be added to the business for it to work. And you've got to have the right tech foundation. And where we see telco service providers getting that right, it's proving our theory out. The hypothesis works, but many are still lost in that journey or transforming in silos. And that's what we've got to get past as an industry to really see this move forward.
Very good.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed for that, Nick, and the insights into growth across the industry. It was great talking to you today.
Absolutely my pleasure. This has been great fun.
Brilliant. Well, look, we end every episode of this podcast by asking our guests what they're excited about doing next. And that could be you've got a great restaurant booked at the weekend, or it could be something in your professional life, or a little bit of both. Nick, what are you excited about doing next?
Well, I'm super excited about DTW, of course. This is, for me and my team, an amazing moment in the year. We get to see so much great work coming together, and the energy in the industry is just remarkable. So really looking forward to that. Beyond that, looking forward to hopefully a nice summer and a bit of traveling.
Have you got anywhere plotted out yet?
Italy, hopefully.
Oh, Italy's lovely.
Love Italy.
Hopefully not too... the northern part of Italy, so Dolomites, Tuscany, those areas. A little bit of
Tuscany's always nice, isn't it? Umbria and Tuscany, great wine. Terrific wine. Best wine.
Rob, so Rob is a secret wine snob. He doesn't tell this to everybody.
Not a snob. Just understand it.
He's extremely judgy when you if you make the mistake of ordering wine with Rob at the table, you get oh really, that one? Okay.
He will remember it.
Choice, Dave. That's a brave choice.
So, Rob, what's your favourite wine? It's from the country we're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's Brunello.
Okay.
Brunello is amazing.
It is amazing. It's the best Italian wine. Lovely brown aged one, underpinned by subtlety. What's not to like? There are many Italian wines that are great, though, but that for me probably is peak.
Well, I have to hit you up some vineyard recommendations, Rob.
No, absolutely. My parents dragged me around vineyards throughout my formative years, so I have this weird experience where I hated it at the time, and now this knowledge has popped out at the other end, which is
I like
quite
the way
useful.
it just comes out randomly as well, and you'll get more detail than you're bargaining for, Nick. That's what I'm saying.
You may not want to start that conversation. Yeah. Yes.
Now, what's your biggest dislike trade in wine, Rob? I think I know the answer for this.
What do you mean, Dave?
Sweetness.
Wine is what you like? The overly sweet. The I have to say this. Sorry if you're from California or you like Californian wine, but opening a bottle of wine and it just being overly sweet is not a good trait.
Look at that.
Sorry, I've exposed myself there. But yes, overly sweet wines just do not.
You have no idea how much he was holding himself back there.
Yeah.
Go on the rant in the restaurant yet again. Yes.
Brilliant, Nick. Thanks again, mate. Good to see you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
If you would like to discuss any of the issues on this week's show and how they might impact you and your business, please get in touch with us at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're all on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to connect and DM if you have any questions for the show to tackle. And of course, please rate and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us improve the show. A huge thanks to Nick, our guest host Praveen, our sound and editing wizards Ben and Louie, our producer Marcel, and of course to all our listeners. See you in another reality next week.